This is Brighter Rays. This week's study is called I Shall See God, and we're in Job chapter 19. And verses 26 is what we're looking at today. Let's talk about the reality of death. Now, often with death, we ignore its prevalence. In Job 19:26, Job speaks of his impending death when he says, "After my skin has been thus destroyed." If we're to speak of and celebrate the resurrection, we must first confront the reality of death and what it is. Every day the sun rises and sets, and we often give no thought of it. Death is just as common, and we probably give an equal lack of attention. I find that death is more of an accepted teaching, or at least there was more teaching in the past than it is today. Perhaps it's because we're able to rely more upon medicine, but death is probably it's just as prevalent. Everyone dies, and it's not like there are less people dying today. But I think it's because of medicine and the things we do. We have more things that kind of make us forget the reality of it. So death is a reality. It's a given. It has to come. In the past, especially the Puritans taught about death, and death was a reality, people, because people died at a younger age. And so it wasn't kind of this hidden, kind of forgotten thing, or like, we have the fountain of youth here and we're going to make you well kind of stuff. People were more realistic, I think, back then about death. Sometimes they were, I think, a little morose and they went a little overboard, but I think death was more of a prevalent teaching back then. Now, we often ignore its finality, too. Death is the leaving of this present existence. The lungs no longer exchange air, the heart stops beating, the blood stops flowing and congeals, the neurons no longer fire, the hands no longer perform work, the tongue no longer speaks, the body becomes motionless and pale. Death is the separation of the soul from the body. Death is the end of some relationships forever, and the pausing of others. Death is the end of all the things that are pursued on this earth, like careers and hobbies. Even retirement ends. Death is a journey taken by everyone. Romans 5:12 says that sin came into the world through one man, and death through sin, and so death spread to all men because all sinned. Death is really the leveler of all, for death comes to the rich and to the poor, the influencer and the nobody, the Republican or the Democrat, the Christian or the militant atheist. Death is unavoidable. Death has been decreed by God. In Genesis 3:19, God says, "You are dust, and to dust you shall return." And in Hebrews 9:27, we're reminded that it is appointed for man to die once, and after that comes judgment. Death may be inevitable, but its time is uncertain. It may come after a long illness, or in an instant. It may come anywhere, at home, at work, on the road, amidst obedience to God, or in the act of sin. Remember the reason of the rich man remember the lesson or the reasoning of the rich man who said to himself, I have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, and be merry. But God said to him, "Fool, fool, this night your soul is required of you, and the things you have prepared, whose will they be?" Now that was the story of Jesus. Remember, he was telling the Pharisees, like, I got everything. I got all the stuff set up. I'm good. And he says, "Fool, your life's going to be required of you. It's final. That's it. All the stuff you did before, it ends. Boom." So we kind of forget the finality of death. We forget that it ends all these things. And if we're not prepared, it'll be the ultimate end of everything that we've done. So we need to think about that. We need to remember the reality of death. The reality of death is that it's final. It brings end to all these things, and it's the separation of the soul from the body. But it's a reality. We can't forget that. We can't pretend like death isn't coming for us. It is, and so that should always be in the back of the mind. We don't need to be morose and dark and despairing. We never need to be despairing about death, but it's reality, and it should play some into the way we think, the way we act, because it has that finality to it. So everything you've been doing, if it's not done for the Lord, it's done. You know, it's over, it's gone. The stuff you collected, it's not going to be yours when you die. So there's that finality there. There's that, what am I doing? Is it going to last? And when I die, does it matter? So we need to keep those things in mind about the reality of death. Now I'll come back next time and we're going to talk about the reality of the Redeemer.